I'm Amy Odell, and welcome to the Back Row Podcast. I am here today with a super, super chic guest, Rachel Tashjian, who is the outgoing fashion critic of the Washington Post, and she's starting a new job as the senior style reporter for CNN. Rachel, it's so great to talk to you.
It's so great to be here.
So before we got on the pod, and I said, can we do video? You were like, I'll wear a chic scarf. What did you end up wearing? And then I felt a little bit intimidated because I normally take my kids to school and then put on just slob clothes and sit in my basement and do my work. What are you wearing?
Well, I'm wearing my glasses, and so I wanted to wear a statement earring that would coordinate with the glasses.
I love it. I
My
love
husband's grandmother made these. They're like long propellers of silver. And then it's really cold outside, so I'm wearing an enormous fluffy sweater.
Who makes the sweater?
It's by this brand called Vogue Boutique. I think it's Italian. They make these really strange knits. Every season there's some weird like Frankenstein knit. It actually has a lot of shape to it, even though, where we are now, I just look like an egg.
You look fuzzy and ethereal with the
Thank
pop
you.
of the silver earring. Rachel, let's get into your new job. Why CNN? My readers love your stuff. When Anna stepped back and they were looking for her, it's not really a replacement, but the new head of editorial content, who of course ended up being Chloe Mall, I had at least one commenter who is adamant that it should be you.
That's so nice. I've started to do quite a lot of video. And I was part of this program called the Creator Hub, where I was paired with a video producer and an editor, and I had a social media strategist and all that sort of thing on these videos, whether it was about style advice or show reviews or contextualizing fashion news. The engagement is just completely different than just doing written criticism. But to me, it's like, and you know this just as well as I do, because we're sitting here taping this, so many people get their fashion news and want to talk about fashion through video. As I talk to Corey Seco, who's now at CNN, and Fiona Sinclair Scott, who's been at CNN leading their style team for a number of years, it was like, this is such a huge opportunity, and how has a big media organization or a news organization not seized on fashion commentary and fashion news through video and social media?
Yeah.
So I'll be doing a lot of things, but that's a big piece of it. And that's part of what made me so excited about it.
It is true. The engagement on fashion TikTok reviews or Instagram Reels fashion reviews is enormous. People want to see the clothes. And when you have column space, you're kind of limited in what you can show them. Have you seen people talking about how reading is dead and we will just soon be listening to stuff? Like people won't read and write anymore. It'll just be like listening and sending voice memos and watching TikToks.
It's interesting. So many of my friends have very young children. How do we ensure that our children read? When I'm writing a piece, I'm always thinking, I'm looking constantly at the word count in my file. And I'm like, how do I condense this? Not condense it in the sense of saying less or the smart brevity of Axios or something. It's like,
Yeah.
I have a limited amount of time, and how do I say things in the most potent, direct, and powerful way, knowing the amount of time that a person probably has to read a fashion review? How do I really reach them in that limited amount of time, and being respectful of their time and their intellectual resources? The way that I've really seen people talking about this is like, no one's reading books anymore. Like no one's reading for pleasure, which...
Oh, girl. Well, I can tell you about that. Yeah. No, yeah. I having just published my third book, that's why I started this podcast, is because the audiobook sales, I believe they outnumbered both print and ebook. I haven't looked at them in a while, but it was just a really big difference from when I published the Anna biography in 2022?
Yeah, that wasn't long ago at all.
So consumption habits are changing, and we need to think about growing our audiences and finding people where they are. We just finished up the spring 2026 shows. Did you go to every city? New York, London, Milan, Paris?
I didn't go to London, but I
Poor
went
London.
Yeah, I know. Poor New York too. But
oh, yeah, I know. New York is in a weird place.
Yeah. Well, there's like this program where the British Fashion Council brings a lot of journalists, and New York doesn't necessarily have that. So I think it gets a little less attention too for that reason.
maybe they'll do that in the future.
Yeah,
But doesn't Instagram pay for these influencers to go?
it might.
Creators? Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I've been told, that they will pay for, create their fashion creators to go to the shows. I mean, how else would they get there?
yeah.
And I think that's probably good for the creators and also good for the brands who want the exposure and good for Instagram, who is facilitating the creation of engaging content. So we kind of came up with this idea to talk about fashion media, not only because media people love to talk about the media, but also because I think you and I both heard from people we talked to in the industry. I don't know what to call it, maybe like a general sort of dissatisfaction with the way fashion is talked about on social media, perhaps who quote unquote gets to talk about it on social media. What did you hear when you were going to the shows about this?
It sort of became apparent that this was a topic bubbling up when Edward Buchanan, who was like one of the first designers at Bottega Veneta and is a big character actually in Robin Gavon's book about Virgil Abloh. He posted this sort of note on Instagram saying, designers take so much time to create these collections, and a lot of the comments are just too mean and dismissive. Of course, I'm paraphrasing here, but that was sort of the tenor of the post. And a lot of people at shows were sort of like, "Oh, hey, did you see what Edward said? Like, what did you think about it?" At first, it was very positive, but then people did sort of, which always happens, you get the day 2 or 3 backlash on anything you post on social media. People were sort of coming into the comments and saying, hey, you can't dictate who can and cannot talk about fashion. I started to see that cropping up again and again. I saw a lot of comments and a lot of posts about whether or not Jonathan Anderson, for example, is um forgotten or written off the Dior client. And again, I saw that sort of commentary crop up with Chanel. Like, I talked to a couple publicists where we would say, it really seems like this is the season where the discourse has really moved into the fashion industry in the way that it exists in other sort of parts of social media.
But what do you mean by that? In the way that it exists in other parts of social media, like other industries?
Yeah, maybe there's a post-stan culture way of commenting on social media that exists particularly on like pop cultural Instagram and social media. Even if you look at the way that this Taylor Swift album has been received, it's fascinating to me. Obviously, I was traveling and working very intensely when the album came out, but I saw
How dare
so
you?
many as a yeah, I saw so much more commentary and argument about what this album is and what it means and how it's a referendum on her celebrity in general. I've heard none of the songs. I think like it's an example of the discourse sort of eating the actual content. And I think that's maybe what we saw happening in fashion this season. People were less less eager to discuss and dissect the collections, although I certainly did see some of that. But there was so much commentary on who gets to talk about fashion and why.
Yeah. Well, algorithms present everything as equal,
Hmm.
right? Like a journalist like you or me is presented as equal to a creator who might not have our training. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad, but I kind of think that's where the discomfort is. I started at the Cut in 2008 and bloggers were like brand new.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people were mad. Tabby was going to shows. I believe she sat front row at Dior Couture wearing a big
Hmm.
bow. People were mad because it was these career editors, and there's not as nearly as many career magazine editors now as there was back then, who had been working to get that spot on the front row. And then she showed up and she was very young, like 13, I want to say.
Hmm.
And she got that spot. People really had big feelings about it. I guess my attitude toward it is we all have to do that same hustle. I mean, look at what has happened to media between the Tabby Bowgate and today. It's hard to find a media company that you can rely on to employ you.
I think one of the complications here is that neither side of this, either the traditional media or the more purely creator media, I think they have trouble imagining what the other person does and why it's appealing. I did this kind of experiment on Substack this season with the Washington Post, which was so much fun. And part of the reason I wanted to do that is because there's such a vibrant comment community there. And there were people who were saying to me, the critics on Substack are more relevant than the critics in, for a newspaper or a magazine, someone like me or Vanessa or Kathy. I think that like what is happening on Substack or TikTok is really important. But I also think like you can really only say that if you're not reading what those people are writing. For a long time in newsrooms, there's been this conversation of, well, how do we get people to read? Rather than saying, well, where are people talking about these things and going to those platforms and engaging there directly? I did notice that both The Cut and The Times had, Kathy and Vanessa experimenting with video in some ways.
You just have to do that stuff to be seen. I don't see a way around it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I also think there's a lot of worry among content creators that like I don't see why a mainstream media person's opinion or commentary is any more valuable than mine. But I think, and you and I know this, I think because we came up through those more like non-traditional ways of like learning how to do journalism, um you know, it is a lot of like years of building up this access and I don't even want to say expertise because I sort of like hate that word. But
Mhm.
like every time I write a review that isn't positive, like I put all of my access on the line.
When I worked in magazines, because I did work at
Yeah,
publications that had these
right.
advertisers, you did have to be careful. It's just the business. I do think one difference between people who start talking about fashion online on their own versus being in a newsroom like you and me is that, when I was in that newsroom, I had editors helping guide me around what I might want to be on the record saying and not saying
Hmm.
about anything I was writing about. New York Magazine at that time, it was sort of imperative to be funny, and it can be
Hmm.
hard to be funny without being mean, and I was very
Yeah.
young and I made some mistakes, but I had people around me with more seasoning and experience to help me figure out where those boundaries are. And I think that when you decide to be a creator and you're just experimenting and posting on your own and you don't have an editor, you don't get maybe that guidance. That's a big difference that I notice. Maybe that's just the way that it's going to be moving forward where people speak more freely. However, I've also noticed people used to say like, "Oh, you can't trust anything you read in Vogue or style.com about a fashion show because they're just going to be positive about everybody." And now they say that about creators.
Hmm.
They're like, "Oh, they just
Yeah.
want to go next season or whatever."
To me, one of the most interesting fashion media, I don't even want to say stories, but sort of narratives of the summer was that Dior, for Jonathan Anderson's menswear debut, didn't invite any influencers. So Lias, who is an Instagram
Yes.
creator who I adore, he's so funny and so smart, decided to throw a watch party for
Mhm.
the Dior show. And like hundreds of people showed up to watch this live stream of the Dior show at a bar in
A
Paris.
men's show.
It became sort of a thing that like, oh my gosh, this has become an event in and of itself. Who needs to get invited to the show? And then the sort of denouement of this was that Jonathan Anderson was like, come to the Reese and gave him a handbag. It was one of those book totes that
Yeah, yeah.
Dior is now doing with like the
Mhm.
different, I think it was In Cold Blood.
Okay. Okay.
And there was like a piece in the New York Times describing this, which didn't mention the bag. And I don't know if it's like the reporter didn't think it was important, or she didn't know, or Lias didn't mention it. But I was like, wait a minute, like we're describing this person as a fashion critic, and he essentially gets a gift in exchange for his coverage. Like that would just like, I cannot accept gifts. So what is your sort of place in the industry? Do you want to think of yourself as a fashion critic and make those rules apply to you, which can be really uncomfortable and difficult? Or are you more of a creator who's hyping up the industry? And it's like, it can be really difficult, I think, when you have a strong relationship with your followers, which like, of course, Lias does, for those followers to watch you navigate that shift.
I mean, do you think people need to choose?
I don't know that they do because if you look at someone like Brian Boy, who's like one of the original influencers, he can be really critical. He'll really tear into a runway collection. And he'll tear into journalists, he'll tear into creators. Like I think you can manage to do it.
He's earned a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for him. I'm sure we're both friendly with him. And he's the editor-in-chief of a magazine now. This
Yeah.
is what I like to point out to people. People were dismissive of Brian and people like him in the aughts. And he's the editor-in-chief of a fashion
Mhm.
magazine. Perfect fashion
Yeah.
magazine. Like, I think he also loves it at heart, and he wears it. I
Mhm.
think it's his passion. I think people
Mhm.
respect that. Does Anna Wintour still matter, or Chloe Mall? I still don't know if I'm supposed to be asking people about Anna or Chloe in that context.
I think that we have to wait to see what Chloe's Vogue looks like. Jessica Testa, did that great interview with Chloe when the news was announced for the New York
Yes.
Times. And I think she said maybe her first issue
Oh,
was sometime next year. So I think we have to wait and see what Chloe's first couple of covers look like. I will say the idea of making Vogue smaller, more personal, potentially more eccentric, that seems like it has a lot of potential to be successful to me. The question of whether or not like Vogue and Anna and Chloe and all of that still matters is a fascinating one, because if you look at the comments, which I'm an obsessive reader of comments, anytime like a Vogue cover comes out, there's such a strong reaction to whether or not this is Vogue or not. That still seems to mean something to people,
mhm.
and they believe it should stand for something, even if they're not picking up the magazine or going to the website every day.
Yeah, I would say that they do matter. Over the summer, I feel like I was hearing about, or like just seeing content about a Condé Nast photo shoot like every day.
Mhm.
Like the Travis Kelce GQ thing. I know they did the Lauren Sanchez wedding cover, which was controversial, but everyone was talking about it. Everyone had an opinion. So that was one where I see what you're saying, where people were saying, like, this is not Vogue, and they were offended by it. But yeah, I think they do matter. I think the industry still cares about being in Vogue.
I think it might matter even more because there's so much change happening in the fashion industry that you don't have a Karl Lagerfeld, even like a Hedi Slimane to latch onto. Like there aren't really celebrity designers maybe at the moment. And so like someone who kind of had this incredible longevity becomes even more relevant as sort of like the interpreter of what's happening. I thought that the Tyler Mitchell covers of like Io and Greta Lee were amazing.
A lot of people slid into my DMs to tell me that they thought Greta looked like a pirate. I can't entirely disagree. She was on the beach and she was wearing Jonathan Anderson brand new men's
Men's
Dior. And
Dior.
she, to me, is one of those people who can just wear anything, like Rihanna, and it looks cool. She has that, like, that it factor, that quality. Even if it's like the weirdest outfit, it just looks cool on her.
I agree with you.
Okay, so we agree. Vogue still relevant. And having written a book about Anna too, I will say, like, her influence is so hard to comprehend. It just really extends beyond fashion. And I'm not sure there are really many, if any, other editors with quite that clout. What do you think? Is there anyone else who can influence politics and entertainment, and fashion, Broadway? Like,
Yeah, I mean, not that no, I can't think of anyone else, you know? I mean,
yeah,
I think she's kind of like the last standing celebrity editor, in that way.
definitely. Yeah. And then the next celebrity editor is gonna be a creator,
Maybe.
I
I
think.
think
It's gonna
it's
be like
like
another, Brian going to Perfect, or something like that. I know Chloe's not inherently a creator, but Anna did pick her, and that might be Anna's sort of old school journalism bias. I'm not saying she
yeah.
doesn't deserve the job and she's not great, but I could also see it going in the future to a creator. How do you see AI affecting fashion media? So Sora 2, the chat GPT image and video generating uh, feature is out. Have you used it? I have not, I'm afraid.
Well, it was funny. I didn't, after I came back from Fashion Week, I didn't really look at my phone for a couple of days, and then I
Wow.
reopened TikTok, and it was all Sora AI. And my husband was sitting with me, and he works in the art world, and there were several where we were just like, this is AI. This is really frightening. I watched an amazing one this morning where Elvis Presley is starring in Titanic. It
Oh,
was
send that
sublime.
to me.
Um,
I wanna see that.
um, I mean, it is really frightening how good it is.
Yeah.
You also see this like this tension between online performance and real life that has been inherent to fashion for the past decade, and something like AI really is poised to make that conversation even more divisive,
Mhm.
like that's kind of, you could sort of look at like Jonathan Anderson and Mathieu Blasi's, like their two debuts, is like the difference between performative fashion, which is very inventive and attention grabbing and provocative, and then clothing that, and I said this in my review, really doesn't look like anything if you take a picture of it with your phone.
Yeah.
um
You called it post Instagram, right?
yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see how people will use the tools of AI. I also am getting the sense that a lot of people are so disturbed by this that they want to go off social media entirely.
Who?
Like Courtney Love, for example. I
Bellwether,
think,
yeah,
yeah,
mhm.
I think so much about the writer Alice Gregory, who is a New Yorker writer. She writes for a number of other places as well. When one of her pieces comes out, I feel like the world just sort of bends to like, oh my gosh, like, can you believe anyone like under the age of 50 is this good of a writer? And she is completely off social media. Um,
I would
I'm like
love to be off
fascinated by this.
I would love
Yeah.
to be off social media.
Yeah.
But, I don't it's, like, seems totally not optional because I'm a fully independent journalist now, and I have my own publication, which I monetize through paying subscribers, and there's churn, so you have to keep finding new subscribers and growing your audience, and I write books that I need to find people, who might be interested in buying them, but I always joke with friends, like, if I ever became a billionaire or just, like, rich enough to not do this, you would have to send a carrier pigeon to find me. Like, I would
Yeah.
disappear from everything. I
Yeah.
it's just it's a lot of work. I have thought about getting an AI avatar of me to help ease the creation of the social media videos because they take
Mhm.
a lot of time. I don't have a staff, so it's just a lot to, like, feed all these different beasts.
I know it is really a lot. And whether you're a journalist who is at a news organization or if you're independent, you have to have a different strategy for every platform that you're on, and you basically have to be on every platform.
Even, like, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Um, follow me on LinkedIn, guys. I do think that AI, on a more serious note, is coming in a big way to fashion. Um, and I've written about this in Back Row before, but AI gives you a quote unquote perfect person to put in your ad campaigns. We've seen brands like Etro and Montclair experiment with AI
Mhm.
generated people in ad campaigns. And for the most part, there were exceptions like was it Levi's that did this and people were upset about it. But those high fashion ones, I think when they just sort of came and went, I didn't see a big backlash.
Mhm.
But from what I hear from friends who work on ad campaigns at creative agencies, this is coming. This is happening.
Mhm.
AI saves a lot of money. And fashion is looking for idealized versions of humans anyway. They're not interested in real people. So I just think this is coming in a big way and it's going to affect everything. And I can't fully comprehend how that's going to look.
There's no reason for a brand like Abercrombie or American Eagle to use a real person unless they're going to use Sydney Sweeney. But the
Yes.
majority of images that are taken by, Shein or Target or any sort of like a Forever 21, um, those images don't need to be of real people.
No, and it is expensive and brands need I mean, we all need endless content. Do you think that creators are going to be replaced by AI? I saw something on Threads which I'm on more and more. Follow me on Threads, guys. Um, I saw someone saying on Threads that now that we've all learned to be creators, or we're learning to be creators, are creators just going to be replaced by AI slop creators, like fake ones?
Probably. At a certain point though, like then why
But
are
people
you
like
watching?
people.
People like people, and if you're just watching AI generated commentary, what are you actually learning? At a certain point it becomes a snake eating its own tail, because if there isn't human creation of journalism and commentary, then what is the AI pulling from?
I do think that the what could affect this actually is copyright.
Hmm.
Like, eventually, I think there's gonna be some like this happened with YouTube, right? Where it was just a free for all on YouTube, and then the copyright police were like, "Well, actually, like, you can't just, like, take some take Daily Show clips
Hmm.
and, like, put them up for your own clout." Where do you think fashion media will be in 10 years? Will Vogue still have covers?
I don't know.
Will we be AI
Probably.
slop versions of ourselves in
I
Instagram
think
Reels?
it's I think it's possible that like magazines will just be covers
Wait,
and like nothing
oh, like,
inside.
online?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good prediction. I like that.
I do think that like those covers and images, when they're good, really matter to people. People get really excited about them. What I really was struggling with this season, and I wrote about this a bit, is that these brands are asking like everyone to pay attention to these fashion shows, right? Like they invite a million celebrities and it's all about the surprising celebrity or the unexpected pairing. They dress the celebrities. And then, of course, there's so much content that comes out of these fashion shows and comes out of fashion brands in general. And then it's like you see this reaction, a lot of these comments that are like, this looks like Zara or this is ugly. And you see industries insiders pushing back on that. I mean, I saw that Alex Fury, for example, was like responding to each of these comments and was like, I'm looking at the Chanel in person right now. I'm holding the tweet in my hand, and what you're saying is completely wrong. I mean, it was like the scene in Annie Hall where he pulls Marshall McLuhan in and is like, oh, like this is what I really wrote in my book. These fashion brands are like, please, please pay attention to us. But then the clothing is so exceedingly expensive. I was looking at the Versace trunk show on Moda Operandi. They're selling dresses that are $26,000.
Ugh. Um, but which season was it? It wasn't the new
This season, it's like the stuff that
fall?
was just, yeah,
No,
no,
you mean
it's the
Dario Vitale's debut
yeah,
stuff?
yeah,
Oh my god. What? I don't even remember the dresses at this point. I remember the tank tops that went like this with like the huge
yeah.
openings on the sides.
Those are
So
also
like
like hundreds of
kind of a
dollars.
dress where they like those
It's
Chloe
a
dresses were wild with all the ruffles, but
Yeah, and those are also six, seven, $8,000.
oh, that's it?
And yeah, and I kind of sitting in that show, which I liked a lot. I liked that show, but I was like, you could get this at Love Shack Fancy or like
That's true.
vintage Laura Ashley. So fashion brands want us all to pay attention, but then the products are completely inaccessible. What is it that they're asking from us? What do they want from us? Do they just want our attention and adulation? And then, when people are offering these comments that are like, this is so ugly, this is dumb, I was underwhelmed by this. I think part of that is this, in some cases, warranted hostility that you're asking me to pay attention to this and you're offering me nothing.
That's such a good point, Rachel.
I was really disappointed by the Versace pre-order thing in particular, because I looked at it and I was like, cool, this is stuff for like 25-year-olds to buy and it'll be less expensive than Prada. But no, it's more expensive than Prada. I'm wondering, what is the relationship that these fashion brands want to have with the average person, whether they're like a creator or just someone who's commenting on social media. How we solve for that question and how we continue to explore the answers to that question is going to shape fashion media over the next 10 years. Like, I
Yeah.
think it makes something like what Nikki Oganaka is doing at Marie Claire so important, because that's a much more real woman, what we can actually afford and wear. Like it was funny. I sat next to Nikki at a show like after Miu Miu, and I was like, I thought that Miu Miu show was genius. And she was like, what am I wearing from that? That sort of lens becomes very important.
Yeah. I
Um,
I do think about that a lot. Like, how do you wear like a lot of these things? Like
yeah.
that we see. I thought that what the brands wanted from us, poor people was to buy the lipsticks
Mhm.
and the eyeshadows and the bag, save up for a bag.
Mhm.
Do you think that that's what they want?
Yeah, I mean, now, like, Louis Vuitton and Hermès are making lipsticks that are wasn't the Louis Vuitton lipstick over $100?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But $150 or whatever it was is not 26,000.
Mhm. I
You probably
guess.
wear it more times than the
Yeah.
dress. Maybe someone should buy that dress and wear it until it meets its value just every single day. Uh,
$1 a day for 26,000 days straight.
do you have any thoughts about the importance of TikTok and if it's gonna become magnified by the reported acquisition, by the Ellisons, right? Is it gonna go the way of Twitter? No, I don't know why any fashion brand would be on Twitter,
Yeah.
particularly a luxury brand. Elon Musk, after he acquired it, he cut so many staff, and it was just
Yeah.
like there's so much more anti-Semitic content, just
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
vile content that that you wouldn't
yeah.
want your brand to be around.
Watching as a journalist, the big change was that the standards of, um speech and, the flagging of inappropriate or unfactual content, all of that declined. But there's so much misinformation already on TikTok that I have a hard time seeing that getting any worse.
Oh, I think it could get worse. I hate to say it. I do think it can get worse. Misinformation is a problem in our industry too. Look at
Yeah.
over the summer with the Jeff Bezos is buying Vogue for his wife or
Yeah.
whatever that rumor was, which was baseless. And then Anna Wintour, when she did her interview with David Remnick after she stepped back, even said, like, I don't I don't know anything about that. Did he call you?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that just went off like crazy on Instagram, which is what I look at more than any other platform. I think it's because that just sensationalist content, the algorithms like it. So
Yeah.
you're kind of incentivized to share things that may not be right. The last thing I want to ask you is, can we each share 3 creators
Yeah.
we love following? You go first.
Okay, so I love Kim Russell, who is the Kimbino. She's really, really good at um like identifying references to older fashion. She was the person who sort of like put her finger on Io wearing that sort of oversized suit, possibly being a reference to Julia Roberts. And then Danielle Goldberg was like, oh, yeah, like that is kind of what we were going for. I love Jay Tibbetts, who does like really great TikTok and Instagram reel reviews of shows and commentary. And then the third is Rashida Renee, who posts under how to be a effing lady. I have never known anyone who has such an insane and amazing deep cut collection of what we call archival fashion.
My 3. The first 2 are, the kind of the earliest people I followed when I joined TikTok, but I still get so much value out of their content. Mandy Lee,
I
who posts
love her.
under at Old Loser in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I think she posts a lot to TikTok and Instagram, but she's a trend forecaster and she forecasted indie sleaze years ago. And then she
Yeah.
was totally right and she blew up and she still is doing that trend commentary. Timothy Cherniev,
Hmm.
he posts under at Relax It's Only Fashion on TikTok. And I just really like his reviews. He does 1-minute reviews of the runway shows and he's so good at it. I watch them all the way through and he has a background in celebrity styling. So he brings that point of view into his reviews. And then I also really enjoy Fashion Roadman on TikTok and on Instagram. He has a way of talking about things and picking out things that are interesting in fashion that I haven't always seen before or heard before. But Rachel, thank you so much for being on the pod.
Thank you for having me. This was
This was
really
great. Will you
fun.
come back?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.